Hi, everyone. This is Aaron, and welcome to our SOLA Network podcast. In this episode, I spoke with Heidi Wong. She is the college ministry director at Exilic Church in New York City, and she recently wrote 2 articles for us at SOLA Network. First, how COVID-19 exposes us, and second, an open letter to college students affected by COVID-19. We talk about her role as the college ministry director, the background behind her articles, and how she has been particularly challenged and encouraged during this time. Thanks for listening. Heidi, how are you? We're recording on Google. You're in New York City.
I am, yeah.
Are you in New York City proper?
Yes, I'm on the west side, like Midtown West part of Manhattan.
That's so cool. Is it exciting? Is it romantic?
There are days when like the weather is nice and I live more on the west, so I'm closer to the Hudson River. And there's like a nice walking path there. And then there are days when I don't know, it's not as like glamorous or romantic. So
Are you going out these days?
Today I was thinking I haven't left my apartment in a couple days actually.
Oh no.
Just with everything.
Yeah.
But I mean, getting groceries and trying to like run some errands. So but less and less, I think, nowadays.
This is a weird question. Where do you get your groceries from? Because on Twitter, whenever people are from New York, it just seems like they just get their groceries from Trader Joe's, and that's like the only place that people go to.
Trader Joe's is definitely my favorite. It's about one of the locations is probably about like a 15-20 minute walk from me.
It's too convenient.
Just I always have to make sure I don't get too greedy because I only have 2 arms and can carry 2 bags back.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. See, I went to New York like to vacation, I don't know, a few years back.
yeah.
And yeah, I mean, doing the subway thing sounds cool, and like I guess walking everywhere.
Yeah, that is nice. I like walking, so it works out well.
I'm glad that you're staying safe and you're staying indoors though.
Appreciate that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
interesting times.
You are the college ministry director at Exilic Church.
Yes.
Exilic? Exilic.
Exilic. Yep,
Exilic
Mhm.
Church. And that's
Yep.
in New York City. Why don't you
Yes.
tell me about your role as the college ministry director, and how did you get there? What was your seminary path?
Sure. So just starting with my role as college ministry director, there's kind of 2 things that I try to do, and it's really in line with what the rest of the pastoral staff tries to do with the non-college community, which is community formation as well as theological formation. So, we have a community group, we have events, we have small groups led by, those serving in college ministry who are young adults. And really the ultimate goal is for the students to know and love Jesus better. A lot of them may not stay in New York after college and leave and go back home or get jobs in other cities. So just for the time that we have them, for them to see Jesus as worth holding on to is kind of what I see my role as.
How
So
did you end up in that position? When you're
yeah,
growing up, were you like, yeah, I want to be a college ministry director?
no, no, it's kind of a long journey. Try to give you the Spark Notes version. I grew up in the Midwest, not in an Asian church by any means, and went to college on the East Coast. And it was really there that I first went to an Asian American church. This one happened to be Korean American. Another guest you've had on this podcast, Sujin Park, her and I went to the same fellowship, so a lot of shared experiences there. Like kind of echoing what she had said, seeing people go to seminary, even if they were, women, wasn't a big deal to me, just because there happened to be kind of that pattern. And I had no thoughts of quote unquote going into ministry, and then went into consulting after college. Was traveling a lot, post grad and consulting. It was just hard, I think, at that age and kind of everything that was going on. So after a certain point in time, I knew I was going to leave that industry, and I was thinking, like, what do I want to do with the quote unquote extra time that I'm going to have now? Just a seminary came into mind, but I knew I wanted to stay in New York City. So most of the folks that I knew went to Gordon or Westminster, and I didn't want to leave. And so that's kind of what drew me to RTS, which was already here in New York. And as for Exilic, when I moved to New York City in 2014, the church started in the fall of that year. So I see it now as God's providence, but back then I didn't really think about it. So I've been able to be with the church kind of since its inception, a little bit by accident. And so I was just a member there for the first couple of years. And then when the call to seminary came about, just discussing it with my pastor, and I was sort of already involved with some of the college ministry activities, I guess, at the time, even though it wasn't like an official ministry yet. So it just seemed like a natural kind of logical place for me to be, being a part-time student and then having the opportunity to put some of that into practice. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I got there.
Okay, tell me again. How did you? I want more detail. I want to know, how did you like go from the Midwest to New York City? Like what happened there? Like what caused that? And then it doesn't sound like you had the calling initially to go to seminary, right? So that kind of happened like somewhere in between.
Yeah, I don't know any other way to describe it other than I think there are some people, and it's great that they have these goals and like a desire, and they know what they need to do to reach those goals. For me, it's really been the opposite, where I feel like I've always just fallen into things without really any intentional planning on my part, and then kind of just being like, okay, I'm here now. Now I have to figure out how to do this. So as far as East Coast, I think just the Midwest was a great place to grow up, but I wanted to not stay there, and so putting it simply, I just wanted to like go as far as possible in country. So that's how I ended up there, and I think that was a good transition before I came to Manhattan. I was in upstate New York prior to this. So it was like a nice transition period, because if I had gone straight from where I was to here, it would have been a little bit hard.
Yeah. Oh, okay, I see. And then that call to ministry then, how did that happen? Did it just hit you all of a sudden? Was it gradual?
So when I was thinking about seminary, I had zero intention to go into ministry. It was more of, hey, I know that the types of questions I have and what I want to learn about is probably better suited for a seminary rather than like my community group or emailing my pastors, because they have more important things to do. Although like they're so gracious and they always answered. But and the role with Exilic kind of came up sort of at the same time. But then what I think has been awesome and also interesting is through seminary, it's been so much more than just like theological education. It's been really formative in so many ways that I'm able to now bring into my role. And so I think it's been such a blessing for me. So I'm in year 2 of a 4-year part-time program. Yeah.
And then I saw in your bio that you have a career in the healthcare industry, or not healthcare, technology industry.
Yeah.
Okay, so I work in healthcare technology. So
Oh,
what is it
okay.
that, yeah, what kind of tech are we talking about here that you do?
I guess it's more social media related.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, just connecting people through applications or different types of platforms, and hopefully making the world feel smaller and allowing people to build community.
Yeah. Do you think that helps you with your role as the college ministry director?
Um, in some ways, yes. This role is sort of new for me, actually, but my experience in consulting definitely helped a lot with just college ministry in general. Thinking about programs, long-term planning, and then setting up the infrastructure to make things scalable and all of that. I think it was so helpful to have that background and to bring that experience in.
Yeah. You wrote 2 articles for SOLA Network, and that's why I'm talking to you today. I think that we can talk more about your background as we look at your articles. But before we jump into the articles, why don't you tell me what COVID-19 looks like in New York City?
There's so much that could be said, and I'm just one person living on one block. So I think like the things that come to mind, and in some sense, it's very eerie, Even when I've gone out for errands to the grocery store, before all of this, like someone would hold the door open or someone would smile, or I don't know. They're just like the simple things. And then now people don't really do that. There's definitely this conscious awareness of how close you are to somebody else. Or if you see somebody touch something, like, do you touch the same thing, or do you like go to the next like you don't even know who's touched that one. People moving on, even on the sidewalk, kind of like getting out of the way. And yeah, they control for the volume of people inside Whole Foods and Trader Joe's. So there's like lines outside, and they only let a couple people in at a time. And so I think all of the headlines that you've read or that anybody's read around the nation, I think in this case they're all true. And I think that's the part that sets me on this like emotional roller coaster every day. Is I have friends who are doctors or nurses, and they're really it's a lot of emotional stress and probably trauma that they're going to have to deal with. And friends getting laid off. It's like everything's just happening so quickly every day. So it's sometimes hard to keep up even emotionally with like where things are at.
Yeah. Your article, How COVID-19 Exposes Us. When you were writing this, did you know what you were doing? Were you like, oh, I want to write this article for SOLA Network? Like, did you send it to Hannah? Did Hannah find it? Like, how did this come about? Because it was it was the most viewed article for the month of March, I think, and I'm sure it's still gaining traction.
Yeah, so the funny thing is, I originally was connected to Hannah, not for anything COVID related. So I wrote something a while back now, or what seems like a while back, or feels like it, for the Jesus and the women that he loved and ministered to, that for that series, John 4, the Samaritan woman at the well. And so that was, we had gone back and forth. The draft was ready and it was scheduled to go up, and then COVID happened. So I think I process through writing. And so, I'll write a few thoughts down. But then for that, it kind of turned into this thing where I wrote something and I thought maybe this could resonate with someone, or this could encourage someone, or potentially challenge someone. And maybe I'll share it with Hannah and see if she thinks the same thing. So I sent it over, and then it went up, and I guess that's how that happened. So I didn't really have any intentions of sending something COVID related. It just kind of happened more naturally, I guess, just given the nature of,
Yeah. As you were writing this, were you, okay, you said that you use writing to like express your, or like, to figure it out yourself, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that the case for this one? Were you using it to process your own thoughts?
I think I was trying to use it. Yeah, I think I was trying to use it to process my own thoughts, but just also make sense of the overwhelming number of headlines that I was seeing on a daily basis, and just observing human behaviors and patterns, and kind of the example of, when a tsunami hits Japan, there's a fundraiser and like thoughts and prayers go out and all of these things. But then in this pandemic, I really wasn't seeing any of that. And I started to wonder why. And that's kind of some of the thoughts that were going through my head when I was putting that to paper.
Yeah. I mean, the article was, I think, a little bit emotional. I mean, you're talking about how we're revealing ourselves, or how God's showing us about our own selves during this time. You wrote, this virus has exposed what my givens are. So do you want to elaborate and share more specifically about what your givens were, especially?
Yeah, I think in a nutshell, they were just really simple things. I think, there's of course the physical of like running to the grocery store with no second thought, and picking up a basket without, trying to wipe it down, and just the things like that, where I never had to think about those things. And my physical safety was not something I really dwelled on, unless I was near train tracks or something like that. So I think that's one of them. And then I think, also things that are more macro, I guess. Like, so even the economy, like just with the way that it's continued to tank and it uptakes and then it goes down again. And I don't know, I just thought that, there could be a recession, but it wouldn't like bring this much chaos as it has. I had a trip planned actually for today to go to LA and see some friends, and that obviously didn't happen. You mentioned taking the subway here in New York. Like, Brooklyn seems as far away as California at this point for me. And I think like the last thing that isn't as physical, but for me has really, I don't know, it kind of hit me, were just the phrases I would use. So I'm going to go for a run. I'll give it to you the next time I see you, or have a good weekend. Like, when I say have a good weekend to my coworkers now, it has a completely different meaning. And we don't even say have a good weekend. We're just like, have a weekend. And even like, I miss you or I love you. Like, it has so much more weight now because there's someone or something to miss. And yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really heavy stuff. And were you thinking about all of that as you were writing it? Like,
I don't know if I was thinking about it all at once. And even after it went up, like, some of the things that I just mentioned have continued to sort of simmer and kind of develop in my mind. So yeah, I think as events keep unfolding and the pace of everything just is what it is, like, there are kind of new things that strike me depending on the day.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for writing the article and for sharing it with us. I think, like what you said, as this keeps going, we're going to find out more things. God's going to keep revealing more things to us. And we're just going to have to roll the punches and just keep hoping on him,
Mm-hmm.
Your second article, an open letter to college students affected by COVID-19. Okay, first, I want to know the story behind this one too, because you wrote like 2 articles, or we published 2 articles in succession. It was like 1 week and then the next week, right? It was really close together. So what was the story behind this one?
Yeah, so for this one, I had met with the college students via a Zoom meeting on a Tuesday night. And normally we would have gone through, like, before COVID, we had this Gospel of John Bible study that we were doing, and it was wonderful and great. And so instead of doing that, though, just given the circumstances, we kind of pivoted and decided to do just a check-in on everyone, like everyone round robin, kind of go around and say like a hi and a low, and just for them to be able to share. A lot of them, well, schools in New York basically closed dorms and gave students 48 hours to leave. So there's some students who weren't able to pack everything up and they just went home. So their stuff is technically still here, and just so many things. And with everyone going home, there's a good number of students from California, international, Hong Kong, Canada, or wherever. And so for us to just be on that call and hear about everyone's experiences was like comforting in the sense that I knew that they were like home and safe and okay. But it was also like disturbing in the sense that, I'm sure there were so many things that they just didn't say in that Zoom meeting. And for the ones that are seniors, they were planning on to have some elaborate spring break. They're going to have their graduation at Yankee Stadium or wherever, or Citi Field. And now none of that is going to be happening. And so I think it's really with their faces and stories in mind that the second article of the open letter addressed to college students came about. I was just thinking about the things that they could be feeling. I was thinking back to when I was a college student, and like, if this happened back then, what I might be going through, and if I could even cope with it. And then, just thinking perhaps, even though like I do have the Exilic college students in mind, like maybe this could be read by a slightly wider audience and be encouraging for them as well of how to flourish in this time, if I can use that word, just given everything, that's going on.
Yeah, like when I was reading the article, I was thinking to myself, okay, like, it sounds like she's being really specific. Like, it sounds like she knows exactly who she's talking to. But as I'm reading, I'm like, wait, she doesn't know me. She doesn't know the college students. It was really, relatable. I think not like generically, but like generally relatable, which is good for that type of article because you were able to speak truth to so many people. Do you feel that you are affected being like a student? Like, how has your education been impacted?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think for RTS New York City, the program here, um, to graduate, 50% of your classes are online. And so I think just the fact that now that we're 100% online isn't a huge shift. However, it does make things like reading or learning Hebrew a little bit harder for me.
Yeah, I bet.
um,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm also a visual learner, so like not having my professor be able to drop on a whiteboard, as easily or at all. Just I have to adjust my way of learning and expectations. But I think I've just been so blown away by how much work my professors are putting in to make this as much of a seamless experience from like the educational perspective as possible and being flexible, but also making sure that we're still getting, we're learning. But then also, their pastoral side of, everyone's working, everyone now that they're working from home, the other spouse is working from home, there's kids, there's like all these distractions yet, and then there's like layoffs. And so they're being really sensitive to that as well. And I think I've just really appreciated that, I think, as well as just being able to continue to learn.
Yeah. I can't imagine doing your seminary and then also doing the college ministry all online and you're in New York City. It just sounds like a lot of stuff to me going on. How is the college ministry being run right now at Exilic? You said you're on a Zoom call with them? Is that your tactic right now?
Yeah, so this is our second, I guess, official year of college ministry, and because our church is generally new. I mean, five-ish years. So, like out of the plant, I guess 5-year time frame of whoever coined that. So I think a lot of the approach has been to try things and see if they work. And so, yeah, when COVID happened, everyone was switching over to Zoom, just churches in the area. So it kind of just seemed like the most logical thing to do. I've been trying to be creative too about even when we're not on a Zoom call together, like how to still provide ways to connect and engagement. So one thing I did was just put out optional submission for like a 15-second video from students and also the people who serve about like where you are, what you're thankful for, and what you're hopeful for, and then just like stringing those all together and posting them on like the page that we use to stay connected. So I think I'm trying to be creative and come up with ideas to continue to foster a sense of community, even though it can't ever replace the real thing.
Of course. And you said most of your students are like maybe out of town or like, not from New York City originally, right?
Yeah, well, a good number of them are from the New York, New Jersey
Oh,
area
okay.
or
Okay. Okay.
Pennsylvania area, and then a good number of them are from a little further out, so like Georgia or California, yeah, or Canada, like Toronto, yeah.
Would you say that a lot of them would want to see the college ministry as like their main group of people that they're connected to?
I think the dynamic of college ministry here in New York City is very interesting and unique. The campus fellowship I was a part of when I was in school in college, I was not in I was not in Manhattan. I was not in like this urban environment, and so you had your fellowships, you had meeting space. You wasn't like there wasn't really much to do in the smallish town that I was in, so there weren't too many distractions. I think here in New York, it doesn't matter if you're a student or not. There's just so many things going on campus, not on campus. There's like concerts and shows and talks and restaurants and restaurant week, and there's just so many things that students could be doing other than church and church community. And I think like schools like NYU and Columbia, before, we came along with the college ministry, they have a lot of established fellowships, for example, like Crew or InterVarsity, things like that. And so it's interesting because I think the Exilic college student population is a mix of different fellowships and different years. Like, we don't get a lot of freshmen, or like we'll get juniors later and they've gone to different churches and then they'll come to Exilic and kind of stay there for their junior and senior year. So I think in some ways, some of them do have like established friend groups from their previous fellowship, or like maybe they still go to that fellowship and come to our church on Sundays. So but there are, like, I think groups and pockets of students who did find community through Exilic's college ministry. And yeah, so I don't know if I can generalize and say that all of them do, just because there's so many different schools. There's like the art schools as well, and they're all kind of coming together in a church, I guess. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for teaching me about that. I don't know like what it's like over there. And so to be able to talk to you like this and just hear what it's like from somebody that's actually there experiencing it, being like right in the middle of it. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
And I think like I said, like with your article, it just shows that like you understand, like what those students are going through. And I think that's how you were able to write so clearly, but also openly to everyone else as well.
Yeah.
Heidi, how have you been particularly encouraged or challenged during this time?
Oh man. I'll start with the challenged piece. So again, like, circumstances change on the daily for the world, for the US, for New York, for Exilic, for my group of friends, for my coworkers, and then for me. And so I think just with all of that change, and just with the degree of separation, I think, between COVID-19 and me becoming, smaller and smaller, to the point where, people I know are affected directly in some way, shape, or form. Um, I think at the beginning, I didn't realize that I was sometimes drawing my sense of comfort or contentment from a relative comparison to other people. So what I mean by that is, I would read, someone's in the hospital, they can't get a ventilator, and think to myself, oh wow, that's terrible. I feel really bad for that person. But in the back of my mind, I'm like, but I'm glad that's not me, and so I'm thankful that that's not me. And so I think I was just hit one day, like God was just like, that's not your source of contentment. Your source of contentment and comfort is me. Like, I am the giver of life. I am your source of life. And for you to draw your, sense of those things from comparing your situation to other people is not honoring to God, and just like messed up in general. So I think that's something I'm continuing to think about, and how to have like empathy, but also how to just always direct myself to the cross, and look to Jesus for my thankfulness and comfort. So I think that's been kind of the main challenge, in addition to just feeling like every day I'm on this emotional roller coaster, working from home and trying to get stuff done at work, and then seeing a graph or some new data visualization about what this is doing in New York, and being unnerved by that, and then being like, okay, now I have to go to my next meeting, and things like that. And I think for the encouragement piece, just starting with my own community, like, there's so many stories that I probably don't even know about, but for the ones that I've either witnessed or have heard about, um, like, just seeing the community be a community and being there for one another. There was even this college student who started, I think the first week that things really started to get bad, he started a like Excel fasting schedule. And I don't know, just like things like that. And people checking in on each other. Our church, like basically every other church right now, is doing the noontime kind of prayer devotional. And I think that's been just encouraging to just hear from different people and pray together. Um, and I think also just for like being here in New York and then feeling the care and the love from other people who are not here, but obviously are following the news. And I think even if you're not physically here, just that text or I don't know, email or whatever, it's been uplifting some days when it seemed really hard. And I think too, just with the larger church community here in New York City, even though I've like never met some of these leaders or pastors, because everyone's online now, like I see their updates and like what they're doing. And I think I just feel like just part of their church in a way, like the universal church of their victory is my victory, vice versa. And so to see them be able to continue to hold services online and still do community online, and even for some churches to reach a wider audience online, I think has been encouraging. And I think people are being bold about inviting their non-Christian friends to tune in on Sundays if it's their first time attending a church. So
yeah, right on.
That's been pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. First off, I appreciate the honesty from the first point. And then also I appreciate you just kind of showing us, opening our eyes a little bit, just to see, yeah, you're right. There are some good things that we can see in this whole ordeal. Mm-hmm. Heidi, would you like to leave our listeners, particularly college students or those working with college students, with an exhortation?
Yes. I know that you would probably prefer this to be like very concise.
No, go for it.
Give it a shot.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
So I think, students or anyone who's in a position where you're leading a ministry with college students or other students, just be much in prayer. I think, even though we're home now and we're working from home and, we probably have more time to do that. I definitely resonate with the fact that it can feel like you don't have time and that your mind is just full of all of these worries, and it could be worries about ministry related things and what you're going to do. And I think, that's just the first one is, God knows all of those needs and worries, and for the needs he placed them there. So to just dialogue with him and find rest in that and not see that as kind of your last resort. Because I think that can be temptation sometimes. And I think for those in positions where you are leading ministries, to see this whole situation, although it can be like personally devastating to communities and churches, but rather than an obstacle, as an opportunity. I hope that something like this will never happen again, but right now we have an opportunity to see how we can flex and change the way we do things to still meet the needs of the people that are in our communities. And maybe those needs were there before and we just weren't meeting them, or we didn't recognize that they existed. So to kind of be a good listener and be a good observer of kind of what's going on, even though you physically can't be there. And I think the last exhortation specifically is for students, and it's a little bit echoing some of the things that I wrote. But yeah, students, I know that this time is really hard for a lot of different reasons, and it can seem like everything's just been ruined. But your generation, or the group that's going through this right now, is probably going to emerge, hopefully, through Christ, more refined and stronger, and will have a type of resilience that, I don't have. And so I think just to see this as a time for you to continue to grow, both as like a student, but also as a person and a child of God, and to know that he's just with you every step of the way.
So good. Thank you so much, Heidi, for being on the show. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thanks, Heidi, for being my guest on the show, and thank you, everyone, for listening. If you have a question to ask Heidi, send them to our email address, podcast@sola.network. TGIF is a linkless column I curate for SOLA Network every Friday. Be sure to check that out, and you can also subscribe to it via email. I'll put the link in the show notes. SOLA Network exists to influence the emerging generation with the gospel of Jesus Christ. Visit us online at sola.network and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. at the SOLA Network. In the show notes, you'll find the link to our SOLA Network podcast feed, and you can also subscribe on YouTube or Spotify. Just search for SOLA Network. Thanks. See you soon.